Good morning, Kate here, bringing you this week's Monday Mission. And this one is all about self-compassion. So this theme has actually come up in my life this week in a few different ways. So I thought it would be a really great topic to talk about. So I'm going to talk about what self-compassion is, what it's not, and then we're going to have a couple exercises at the end. That'll be our mission for the week. So how this kind of showed up for me, one of the ways is that my youngest, Brooks, was sick this week. No big deal, slight fever, little cough. He's fine. But when he was sick, I, gave him extra attention and he was able to snuggle in my bed and, he could eat in his bed in his room, which normally we're not allowed, right? I just, had a lot of compassion for him at this time when he wasn't feeling well. And it got me thinking about how, as often as a mom, when we are sick, we don't give ourselves that compassion, right? We hold that expectation that we continue to do all the things, right? And if we're truly not up to doing them physically because we're sick, we beat ourselves up for it, right? We should all over ourselves. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Shouldn't be laying down. I shouldn't be taking this time for myself. So it just got me thinking about how I can have so much compassion for Brooks, right? And then no self-compassion, no compassion for myself when I'm feeling the same way. I'm going through a human experience, right? Some other ways that it showed up were actually with two of my clients this week. So I'll go into that a little bit later, what came up with them. But that's why it just felt like a really great topic to talk about and address with everybody. So let's talk about what self-compassion is. So this actually comes from Dr. Kristen Neff, Neff, if you wanted to look up her website or follow her on Instagram. She does have a book about self-compassion. And what she talks about self-compassion being, she actually defines and explains that the word compassion actually means to suffer with. So compassion and self-compassion, the first part is that you have to recognize that there is suffering, right? And I think that's often where we fall short with our own self-compassion, okay? Is we don't feel like we should be considered as suffering. We don't recognize it in ourselves, right? We may recognize it in someone else, but we don't sort of give ourselves that same recognition. The expectation for ourselves is much higher than it is for everyone else. So the first part is you have to even recognize that the suffering is there. And then the second part is feeling moved by this suffering, right? And wanting to provide support for the person that's going through this and kindness, okay? So recognize that the suffering is there and then you're moved by the suffering to provide kindness and support and help them in any way that we can, right? So self-compassion is showing compassion to ourselves, the same compassion that you would show to a friend or a family member, your kids. You would do the same for yourself. That is self-compassion, okay? What self-compassion is not, and I think this actually sheds a light on why some of us don't give ourselves compassion. The first is that it's not self-pity. And I think a lot of us feel like we will be having a pity party for ourselves if we show ourselves self-compassion. But here's the difference. Self-pity is just wallowing, right? Oh, life is just the worst. Nobody else has to deal with this. Nobody else has it as difficult as I am. I'm the victim. It's everyone else's fault. I had nothing to do with it. This is happening to me, right? That's sort of that self-pity. Now listen, we all need a good wallow. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I've definitely wallowed in my life. A lot of times I have to wallow first before I can get to the self-compassion and solution problem solving stage, right? So there ain't nothing wrong with a good wallow, but that's not self-compassion. That is self-pity. That's throwing a pity party, right? And that has its place as long as you understand that that's what's going on, but it's not self-compassion. I think, though, what keeps us from showing ourselves compassion is that fear that we're going to look like we're playing the victim or we're just having a pity party for ourselves, right? And we don't want other people to think that or feel that way. The other thing that self-compassion is not, which I think also prevents us from giving it to ourselves, is it's not self-indulgence, right? So it's not oh, well, my life's so hard right now, so I deserve to just eat whatever I want, or I deserve to buy all of the things because I'm going through this really rough time, right? It's not this self indulgence, it's just understanding and accepting that you are experiencing something that is difficult, and it's part of the human experience. Other humans go through this too, and you would have compassion for them if they were going through whatever suffering or whatever issue is going on for you in your life. Okay. So I think, kind of illustrating what it is not helps us understand maybe our hangups around it, right? So, I brought up the two clients that this kind of showed up for them this week and how it showed up for them. So the one is experiencing a lot of overwhelm. So, a ton of things on her plate, a ton of new things on her plate. So, things she's never experienced before. And we all know how tough that can be to navigate something when it's the first time, when it's unknown. We don't know what to expect. We don't know how to handle it, or how we will show up in that situation. A lot of unknowns that are leading to a lot of overwhelm for her. And she was having a hard time showing herself compassion for that, right? So I had her pretend that a friend came to her with this same level of overwhelm, this same level of newness and unknownness going on in her life, and I had her tell me what she would say to this friend, and it was, "Hey, you'll figure this out. You've done this in the past. Um, Look what you did this, when you had this experience, and look how you handled that. You can trust yourself to get through this. Anybody would feel overwhelmed. Your feelings are completely valid. Any one of us would feel overwhelmed when we had this all going on our plate, right? So the things that she was saying to her friend are the things we actually want her to be able to say to herself. But we often don't do that. We often hold ourselves to that higher expectation, right? The other client I was working with experienced a lot of loss in her life. And so she is going through grief. And, a lot of inner talk is, you should be over this by now, right? You should have moved past this. And same kind of thing. She shared with me a story how she was talking with someone who had a similar loss in their life. And she shared with me what she said to this person. And it was a lot of compassion for that person, right? There's no timeline to your grief. No one is saying you should be over this. You never really truly get over this loss, right? She had all of this compassion for this person. But then when she was having these feelings, right? When the grief was kind of washing over her, it was, you should be over this. You shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't have to deal with this anymore. Like, get over it, right? So we are always able to show the compassion to someone else, and then it's difficult to show it to ourselves, right? That happens for a lot of us. So this week's mission, should you choose to accept it, is to start practicing showing yourself some self-compassion. And there are a couple ways that we can do that. The first one is, when you're having a rough time or when you're in a certain situation, I want you to literally think of a friend or think of your child, right? So if you're, my example with my youngest son, think of your child, friend, family member, right? And what you would say to them, how you would treat them in that moment. And then do the same for yourself. Say the same things to yourself, treat yourself the same way, right? So Brooks, I let him rest. He got a little extra TV time than he normally would, right? He had more juice than he normally would because he needed fluids, right? Give the same to yourself. Allow yourself that break to let your body rest and heal itself, right? So showing that compassion to yourself. So whenever you're in a situation, you're just struggling, there's some suffering going on, you're dealing with some tough things, say to yourself what you would say to a friend. Treat yourself the way you would treat your child or your family member, your mom. Okay. The other exercise that we can do is recognizing that we all have that younger self, right? We all have that inner child, you may hear it referred to as. And stay with me, because I know this gets a little woo woo, and this was something that I had pushback against too. But there's an exercise that you can do to show yourself some compassion, because there are some things that we can do through touch that will send that message of compassion for you, and it will regulate your nervous system. So, you remember I've talked before about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is our sort of rest and renew, rest and digest system, and we want to activate that, especially in times where we're having a lot of stress, they're really overwhelmed. So, some of the ways that you can do that is just by cradling your face. Right? So, just maybe even both hands, right? Kind of like you would do with a child, and letting the touch on your face, that skin contact, regulate your system. Okay. Another way is to put your hand on your chest and on your abdomen and just let them rise when you breathe in and fall when you breathe out. Okay. Another way is to just lightly stroke your arms, just like you would with a kid. Okay. But remembering that this is for you, this is for your inner kid, and you're showing compassion. And just those little touches, those little things that we can do to give that same compassion to ourselves that we would to friends and family. Okay, so that's your mission. Should you choose to accept it, I know that one can get a little like, oh, I don't know if I can do that, but I'm serious. Try it. It really works. So when you're having overwhelm, stress, suffering, just a lot of struggle, okay, you're going to say and do for yourself what you would do for friends and family. And you're going to practice some of the self-compassion exercises and touches. Okay. All right. As always, share with me how this lands for you, what comes up for you this week, why you maybe find it hard to show yourself compassion. If you try these things, if you complete your mission, share with me how that worked and what it felt like and what thoughts came up for you. And I hope you have a great Monday.